Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. Today, we're talking about midlife dating, aka where the risks are higher and the red flags are sometimes a little brighter. But we have the guy who's responsible for the F yeah method in the house today. So before we get into that, because I know you guys are like, F yeah, you're ready to hear about it. F yeah. And welcome to the show. Thank you for hanging out. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Beautiful. Where are you currently, like in this geographical plane that we call Earth?
I'm in Toronto.
Our weather is not as bad at yours, but like right now, it kind of feels like it's heading that way. So the F yeah method, I mean, A, it just grabs your attention right away. Tell us, how did you come up with it? Where did that come from? Just like, what is it for everybody who hasn't heard of it before?
Sure. Well, so the full name, and I'll say it once, and then I'll use the abbreviation. It's called the fuck yeah method because there was that, I don't know, figure of speech or whatever. There was a guy who started the whole fuck yeah thing. If it's not a fuck yeah, it's a no. And so I guess I'm coming up to the 14th anniversary of the end of my marriage. So 14 years, and I've had two relationships in there, one for 5 years and one for 7 years. So I spent the other half, and both lovely people. And I spent the other half of that time dating. I had a lot of friends who were also dating at the same time. So we're all in the same group. We're all commiserating. We're all whatever. And I had an experience. I met this woman on a dating site. And before we ever met, like we're just chatting, we had moved off the dating app. We're now talking by text. And I asked her if she liked cuddling because I like to cuddle. And I thought she was going to say yes, because I thought, like, every woman's looking for a man who wants to cuddle, right? Well, don't make assumptions. And her answer was sometimes. And it sort of hit me. And I went, oh my God, she doesn't like to cuddle. And then I went, oh, well, and I just kept moving on because everything about her was fabulous. So we ended up having a relationship for a number of years. And that relationship ended because she didn't like to cuddle. And what it really was, if you're familiar with the love languages, right? The five love languages. Well, touch is my number one love language. And it was her number five.
Mhm.
So, we were totally inverted in love languages. But what it did is it made me say, wait a sec. When I look back, I have to say, she told me, right? She told me
Right. Yeah.
who she was. And not that there's anything wrong with that, right? There are people who are touch people. There are people who are not touch people. And they're all good. They're just not a good match, But I knew 5 years previous how this relationship was going to end. And I just didn't listen. And it made me start thinking about the dating process and what things that you can do to increase your odds of finding the right person and give you the courage and resilience to not choose people who tell you that they're not right. But you have to know how to do that, right? You have to know there has to be a way to do that. And that's what I started thinking about. And so I just started thinking about, this little thing and that little thing. And I talk about it with my friends, or if I'm out on a coffee date with somebody, I would say, hey, yeah, I'm thinking about this. What's your experience? And it slowly evolved into this methodology. Follow this, and it will help you increase the odds of finding your forever person and help you identify the people who aren't up front.
No, I love that. And that is a really big thing. It's almost the inverse of what we see generically in relationships. Normally, you see a lot of women get into relationships thinking that they can change a man or that they might overlook a red flag. Actually, men are also super notorious for overlooking red flags. Like we have, like, are they hot? Like the hot crazy scale. And so we have a bunch of metrics like that. Like I said, typically you see women like, you know what, physical touch isn't his love language. We'll work on it, and then like they'll become the cuddler. But it was the opposite in like that example you gave us, that once again, you knew what it was and you could probably tell what the downfall of the relationship would have been or what it was going to be. But sometimes we just can't help ourselves. We go with it.
Yeah, no, the problem is the only thing we know to follow is our heart, right? Do I feel the chemistry? Do I feel the butterflies? If I feel the butterflies, therefore this person is a candidate. And now, if they feel the butterflies as well, now we walk down this path together to see if we're something more permanent. But how do you evaluate as you're walking down the path if that person is the right person? And that really, that really ended up being step one in what I call the fuck yeah or the F yeah method, is to know your target, right? And when I say know your target, it sounds like, I would say, I'm looking for a woman who, looks like this and has these personality characteristics and, has these hobbies and that sort of thing. No, you don't paint a picture of them. You paint a picture of your precise needs. And in the guide, I tell you how to do that. And then you have a very clear picture of what you need from that person. So when you're learning about them, you've got this thing here, right? That says, this is what I need. Does he or she have the right combination of qualities? And if the answer is, I give you a way of coming up with very conclusive answers.
And that's really helpful because so often we all have these lists where we're trying to tick things off of. And we all know that nobody's perfect and they're going to hit 100% of the mark of what we're looking for in a partner. But that's the thing we never really talk about, is how many things or what combinations of things really need to go together to even rate it as a good match or worth it.
How do
Because,
you define if someone is a good match?
yeah.
Right?
And
And the problem is that we don't do anything to define that, or we've just got this rough notion of what we want, and then we're driven by chemistry. And here's the thing, chemistry is important. You want your heart beating, right, for this person. But chemistry can be a liar. We've all been deceived by chemistry. So you need chemistry and this foundation, right? This more objective foundation of, here are my needs. How does this person match my needs? And the needs are segmented into hierarchies. So certain needs you just can't violate. If they're not there, it's a non-starter.
now, also, shout out to you, because this is an issue that I have with a lot of the people kind of in my generation that I work with, is commitment. I was like, we have no problem committing to a night out, to a job, to a plethora of things, but somehow when it gets a friendship, but somehow when you get into the romantic space, some of the guys I work with, they just have trouble translating it. But you said that, 14 years post divorce, two other long term relationships in there, obviously you've probably had some shorter kind of dating situations, because you might be Houdini and you can just make the good partner appear and you don't have to hit the market like we did.
No, no, that's not me, sadly.
Yeah, but I mean, what's your current status now? Are you still dating? Are you in another relationship? I mean, we
No,
are
no,
in the
no.
bachelor pad,
I'm
so
single.
okay.
I'm single and still looking and following my method to find that person. But to address the issue about people who, when things start getting more serious, have trouble committing. So there could be two issues there, one of which can be helped with the guide, and the other of which can't, right? So here's the thing. If you have baggage from your past that causes you to have trouble just committing in general, then that's not what the FEM method is for, right? The FEM method increases the odds that you will find your forever person, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't tell you anything about then how to conduct that relationship. and how to be good in that relationship. There's lots of, tons and tons of books on all of that stuff. And I'm not qualified to talk about that. That's more of a dating coach or a psychologist or something like that. But when if the problem that you're having, sorry, if your problem committing is because you're not finding the right person to commit to, and so you start to go down these paths, and you go, oh no, I can't commit to this person. Well, the person may be not the right person, and if you had the discipline of identifying exactly what you need from that person up front, then rather than blaming yourself and saying, "Oh, maybe I just can't commit," then there's no blame, right? Because there's nothing wrong with that person that you're not feeling that you can commit to. They just don't have matching needs, right? But you
Yeah.
recognize that. You recognize that rather than being blinded by chemistry. I'll give you one of the most painful things for me is so I live midtown Toronto. And Toronto, the greater Toronto area is probably about 6 million people. It's the third largest city or fourth largest, depending on who you're talking to in North America. Um, so it's a big city, right? With lots and lots of suburbs and then cities that border the suburbs. One of my know yourself things is I want someone who is within a bike ride. Now, I drive my car, but when the weather is warm enough, I'm almost always riding my bike. And I just want someone, I love spontaneity and all that kind of thing. I don't want someone who's half an hour or 45 minutes away. I tried that. 45 minutes away, and then there's no spontaneity in the relationship. Other people have no problem with that, and they're just different from me. So there are probably a lot more people. If I put, for instance, I think the smallest radius I can put on my search is 10 miles, which is to me way longer than a bike ride. So I am seeing all these women who are potentially fabulous matches for me. Right? They've got wonderful profiles, they're beautiful women, they look like they've got interesting lives, and they live too far away from me. So they're no. And it pains me to do it. It pains me to do it. But I know that I have said, I've identified up front that this is a need for me, that if it's absent will cause me anxiety. Meaning, if I decide to get into another long distance relationship, I know that will cause me anxiety. So if I decide then to violate my geographic boundary and pick somebody, who is a 45-minute drive away from me, which is still inside the city, then all I've done is laid the foundation for a failed relationship because I know this causes me anxiety. So it stops you from doing that.
No, and that's huge because, like we've kind of touched on, is being able to identify the tools that you need to succeed is probably one of the most underrated skills. It's something that we don't talk about enough because everybody thinks it's so common sense that it just goes on autopilot. But really, if you take the time to do all the pre-screening, then you don't have to worry about all the bugs, issues, hiccups, potholes on the back end because you're already kind of aware of them going into the relationship or the situationship or whatever type of thing that you're in.
You know what you're talking about. You're talking about measure twice, cut once.
Percent. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tried and true saying for a reason.
Yep.
And I think that's also really refreshing. We talk about this population is getting crazy. Like what used to take you 10 minutes now takes you 30 minutes to get places. But I love that you have that geographical boundary of, hey, I wanted to be in proximity where I could either walk to you or take a bike ride to you. Because that is really big. Because I also love spontaneity, but also it helps get rid of excuse. because there's no real excuse we can't really see each other because we're under a bike ride. That's something, and hopefully you guys have that shared interest of you like being outdoors and physical. Because if you're a homebody, even a bike ride kind of seems like long distance to you. But like having that boundary, actually, I think it could also foster a healthier relationship just for the longevity of it. Because we're really good at making excuses. We're like, hey, we found the right person, but I was like, do I really want to go an hour across town? No, but what's the excuse for me not to take a bike ride? I was like, it's 70 degrees outside, sun's out, we don't have work tomorrow, yada yada. There are just so many reasons. It's harder to find reasons to actually flake, to bail, not to see your person.
Well,
Even if
yeah,
it's a little
it
drive by.
makes it easier. It makes it easier to conduct the relationship when you've identified that what they have to offer is what you need. And you know that because you very clearly defined what you need. I haven't sort of given you an overview of what the FYA method is. So maybe I could just do that first. The first part where you identify your needs, right? I call that the compatibility code. Your needs are the code for your compatibility with that other person. The second is the odds optimizer, and it all revolves around the idea that at the end of the day, it's a numbers game and it's how you play the numbers. And I talk to you. I know that sounds very unromantic and it sounds there's a word I'm looking for that I can't think of. But the point I'm trying to make is if you go out on a coffee date a week, you are likely, the odds say, you are going to find your person 4 times faster than someone who goes out on a coffee date a month. The third part is called the reality check. And it is how, as you are working the numbers and looking for that person who is the perfect match, how you make sure, you are crystal clear that that person is who you really want or stops you from settling for less than you deserve. That's the reality check is how to have that discipline. And then the fourth part is the FYA moments. How do you know? And I walk you through sort of a path that you could potentially go down from, going on that first coffee date until you're in a full-blown relationship. What are all the steps along that path? And of course, every path's different. And I've probably never taken the same path twice. But, you can set up some general milestones along the way. And I take you through each of the milestones and say, here's how this milestone, coffee date or going for a walk in the park next or going for a brunch next, you're sort of working up your intensity level there. But what constitutes an FYA to go on to the next step? And every step needs an FYA to go on to the next step. If it's not an FYA, it's a no. And you're asking yourself that question at every step along the dating path. And you could, at any time, you can go out on a coffee date and say, this person isn't for me. So you're on the graph and then you drop off. Or you could say, yeah, they're an FYA, on a coffee date. Let's go for a walk on the trail, right? And then you walk on the trail and they're either an FYA or they're not at the end of that, based on how I, show you how to make that evaluation. And then you'll either continue on the graph or you'll drop off. And at any point, at any milestone, you can come to the conclusion, no, they don't match my compatibility code, right? Sometimes it takes many steps along the path to discover that. But now I realize, no, I've seen them in front of my friends and they're missing this thing or these things. I've seen them in front of my family now and they're missing this thing or these things. Or I've done both and they're not missing anything and they're an FYA for a full speed ahead. And now you're into a full-blown relationship.
once again, this is something that I like talk about all the time. So if you're new to the channel, you'll hear this at least 1,000 more times. And that is, not everything is meant to be forever. And that's okay. Because the thing I love about the fuck yeah method, and that like it's broken up into 4 parts, is that before you pass go and collect the $200, you got to make sure everything's in order.
Right, right,
And if it's
exactly.
not, it's okay to get off the ride. So often we feel guilty about honoring our boundaries or sticking up for what we want. And when we shouldn't, because really it does both people a better service, in my opinion, because the less time we waste and the more time we spend
Absolutely.
actually fueling quality relationships, the better we both are. So if we make it to that second date, past coffee, past a hike, and now we're doing real life, like everyday stuff, incorporating our lives together. And then you're like, you know what? We're super compatible, but our lifestyles are not. And you're like, hey, I think we should end it here. That to me says so much more than for you to realize it's a fuck no. And we keep trying to go deeper and deeper into it. And then 6 months to a year later, the potential friendship that we could have had is over because we've started to like not like each other.
Yeah, you burned the
Or
relationship.
exactly. And then who knows if you missed out on meeting your perfect match? Because, yeah, you still have this killer guide, but you were too busy investing in something that really wasn't for you. That was an F no
Right. And
forever ago.
that, yeah. And I told you I had these two relationships after my marriage, and they're two really lovely women. But neither of them is with me now.
Right.
And I ended one relationship. The other relationship was ended for me. So neither of them are with me now. So I have to ask myself, could I have had something in place beforehand that would have shown me that these were not forever relationships? And so that's why I set about to do that. So it puts some discipline into the process. And really it boils down to a really simple equation, right? Your F yeah person is, F yeah equals butterflies, right? Chemistry plus the fundamental. The problem is that, most of us don't know what the fundamentals are for us as we're looking for somebody. And so we just rely on chemistry and sort of winging it. So now you've got this second element. It's not just F yeah equals chemistry. It's F yeah equals chemistry plus fundamentals. Don't forget those. Those are the ones that are either going to confirm that this person is your F yeah person, or they're going to tell you that, that is not a person, or that's a person that's less than you deserve. Now, when I say that's less than you deserve, I just want to make something very clear. It's not that they're not something, right? That other person. It's not that they're less than in some way. It's not that they are, there's some defect to their personality. It's just that whatever their compatibility code is, whether they know it or not, doesn't match yours, right? That's all it is.
Yeah.
So if you end it because you maybe have the chemistry, but you recognize the fundamental isn't there, then you're not saying that person is bad. You're just saying our needs don't match.
I think that's really the basis behind the old saying, it's not you, it's me. I love using that saying and I say it all the time because it really is not you. Like you are great, for lack of a better word. What's going on in your world doesn't really matter because this is really about me that, hey, my fundamentals aren't being met, or the butterflies that I felt, they're gone now.
Yeah, but the problem with the expression "it's not you, it's me," actually, it's not. That's not true. Well, I guess you could argue that it is because there's no defect in you either. The problem with that expression has a lot of baggage now. There's a TV commercial running where there's this woman is sitting across the table from a guy, and she says, I need to break up with you, but it's not you. And he says, that means it's me. So, but when you understand it as I have a set of needs
Mm-hmm.
and things that I can offer, and you have a set of needs and things that you can offer, and they don't match. And that's all. There's nothing wrong with your set. It is perfect for you.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that AI try to get across to people are statements or statements. It sounds a little harsh, but sometimes you need tough love. I'm not responsible for how you feel. So if I say the sky is blue and that breaks your entire world down, I'm sorry, but that's not my fault. But I kind of like the FEM method because you're talking about frequency. It reminds me of like a night out in Vegas. I was like, you got to keep playing. You got to be in it to win it. Basically, the more hands you play, the more likely you are to actually win a pot. Sure, you might lose some, but you got to play in order to win. So, what's one thing that you notice a lot of people who've invested in the fuck yeah method and hit the jackpot kind of finally get? And then what's something that you see a lot of people tend to struggle with, or they're like, it's just not working for me?
I don't really had that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I can think about, because it's not difficult to follow. I mean, the method itself is super simple, and really all it's doing is applying a little discipline to something that never has any discipline applied to it. And then it's just, once you've set everything up, once you've decided what your needs are, it's just a matter of sticking to your guns and not saying, oh yeah, well, I recognize that woman lives 45 minutes away from me, which is well outside of my zone, but she looks so great, so I'm going to click on her anyway and see where a conversation goes. Well, the worst thing that could happen there is that the conversation goes somewhere and that we actually develop something, and then I would get frustrated because of the distance. So it's really just having the discipline to stick to what you need.
I guess I could have rephrased that. You say you still use the fuck yeah method for yourself. Since you've started living this lifestyle, have you noticed an increase in quality of relationship that you've been having?
This is brand new.
I mean, we all workshop our ideas, and you've kind of probably been thinking about this or like piecing it together a little at a time. Since the idea kind of like clicked, have you noticed that, hey, I'm actually finding better people, or like I'm happier in my relationship? I know it's new, but have you noticed those little things, or are you still kind of trying it out there when you date?
I'm searching. I'm like, if someone goes to Amazon or Audible and buys the fuck yeah method, I'm in the same boat as them, right? I'm out there. I'm dating. But what I'm doing is I'm making sure, rather than when because it usually is a coffee date is the first thing that I do. It lasts an hour and
Low investment. Yeah.
low investment, yeah. But I know that, to the best of my ability to discern this early in our conversation, they meet my compatibility code. And I don't go through, like, before I meet them, I don't go through this whole due diligence process through the dating app or by text where I vet them against all these criteria. No, that unfolds over time. But in a coffee date, you're saying, at the end of the coffee date, you say, do I have butterflies? Yeah, I've got butterflies. To the best of my ability at this early stage in our conversation, does she match my compatibility code? Yes, she does. Then she's a fuck yeah. So let's go for a walk next. Something a little bit, longer and a more in-depth conversation. What I'm doing is I am not going out on coffee dates that I would have before, because my only evaluation would have been chemistry. How does her profile hit me? And now it's, yeah, how does her profile and her pictures hit me? But it's also, what does she say in her profile? And are there any keys in that will let me know that she either does or doesn't match my compatibility?
I keep trying to compare things, but there's really nothing like it out there.
That I found.
Right. Because everything that I've ever done in relationships, in psychology, and kind of just like connection really deals with getting to the door and what happens after you go through the door. But this kind of is a step before any of that.
Right.
And it's so hard because people, they like to see what's coming next. We don't like cliffhangers. It does something to our brain. Like, we need to know what comes next. And so I think the people who invest in the fuck yeah method, who can say like, hey, before I even get to the door, is this something I want to do? Yes. I think here's what trips me up is I'm always like, okay, yeah, it's something I want to do. Now I get to the door, because to me the door isn't the coffee date, or it's what happens after like date one or two. You're invested now, because this does a lot of the screening. I don't want to say you want to keep notching at each moment of your relationship, like after a month, after a year. I mean, there comes some things that become like, is it still a fuck yeah or is it a fuck no? And that relationship might end in divorce or just ending a long term partnership. But it's just so hard to do the little, like you said, you don't help them navigate the relationship. You just help them find the
No,
relationship.
no, no. I'm not qualified to do that.
Right, right. And
I
I
have no expertise in that.
Yeah. And I was like, I just think this is such a great thing, because so many people think that finding and navigating have to be in tandem or together, but really they don't. You're like, no, the reason that you're having trouble probably navigating this relationship is because you are not finding the right relationships.
That's right. You're not finding the right person, and you're not turning away the wrong people. Right. That's equally important, is turning away the wrong people, the people who don't match your compatibility code.
You hear the term green flag, red flag, beige flag a lot. Is there a green flag that you've ignored or that you passed up because they didn't meet your code?
Sure, all those people who live outside of my geographic zone, right? All those people, maybe everything else that they have is a green flag for me. Maybe geography isn't, is the only thing that is a red flag for me with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'm passing up a fantastic love by not, going outside of my geographic zone. A love that I would just have to drive a little bit farther for. And the thing is, I'm saying, yes, yes, I am making that sacrifice. And that's what discipline in this process is. It can hurt, and it does. It does. I live in a big city. There are lots of women on dating sites, and there's lots of great women who are just a little too far away from me, but they all end up in my feed. It's painful.
And I know like a couple of examples we talked about are from dating sites, but I was like, I assume you're a person who likes to walk, goes on bike rides, lives outside of those two dichotomies. So the people you ever meet in the wild, as we call it in real life, who you may not know at the time, live outside of your 10-mile radius. Have you ever shut those down? Because I was like, say you're out at like the grocery store or even at work, at like a film or anything, like you said, you meet somebody and you just happen to start a connection. Do you then refer back to the code to be like, hey, we've made this connection, but now I found out that they're outside of my geographical boundary. What would you do?
I'd say no. The point is, if I have to spend 45 minutes in a car, and by the way, that's in no or regular traffic, not in rush hour traffic. It's a lot more than 45 minutes, right? So rather than just saying, hey, come on over, or hey, I'm coming over, or hey, you want to go sit on a patio, right? Like, I mean, it's 7:45 here now.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone doesn't live too far from me, I could, if they were my partner, I could conceivably say, hey, you know, I'm coming over, or do you want to come over, or do you want to go grab a drink or whatever? And we'd be together 15 minutes later, right? Whereas that person that you talk about, now I have not met somebody outside of dating sites that I have been interested in a long time. Really, it's only through dating sites. But the idea still stands, right? If I have said that this element on my compatibility code, if this one element is so serious to me that if it's not there, it will cause anxiety. It doesn't matter where I meet the person,
Yeah.
right?
Go ahead.
Like I was on vacation 6 weeks ago, and I met somebody there, and I know, she was a lovely person. I know that, and our conversation flowed freely, and I know that, in a different scenario, that a different geographic scenario, that she would be somebody I'd be very interested in. But, you know, we were in the same place on vacation, but we're 500 miles apart in real life. Some people are willing to do that. No problem. They have no problem managing that. And that's their compatibility code. It's different from mine, right?
It is. And I guess that's like I said, that's the toughest part is compatibility isn't necessarily one dimensional because there are a lot of different things, or sometimes for another perspective, you're compatible with a lot of people on paper, and then there's the reality of life. So I, as somebody who I did order it. It's I think a couple people are getting it for Christmas this year. Actually, that was my decision. I was like, I think I'm giving everybody a book. Some of the books from some previous guests, some books that I just like, some books that are on my shelf. I was like, everybody's getting a book of sorts, and I have a lot of single friends who, for better or worse, cannot save themselves. So I was like, you know what? Maybe they need to start saying fuck yeah and fuck no to some things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. No, it's a great Christmas gift. Great idea. Thank you.
That's it. I'm also gonna love to see like their feedback once they start reading the book and the applications of it, because especially living in a tourist town like we do here in Nashville, of 48-hour friends as we call them, somebody's only here for a day or two,
Right. Right.
or the fact that it's so fast that, or I think this year I've met a lot more people in the wild than I have on any dating app.
Right.
So it makes it a little harder because when you're in person, some of the questions or the screening that you do aren't the same as the screening I do when I have time to curate responses and sort through people. Because if you meet somebody on Bumble, Tinder, Plenty of Fish, I don't have to talk to you right now, or I can also set the boundary of age, distance, height, ethnicity. But whereas I bump into somebody on the street, you're not going to give me 20 minutes to craft a response or to, look some things up. I was like,
Right.
our interaction's going to happen right now. But I'm really excited to see how, after investing more into this method, the discipline that I have, just not in my dating life, but just life in general, kind of goes up. And also the quality of people who I'm even thinking about entering into a relationship increases or improves. Improves is a better word than increases. When was the real last fuck yeah moment you had, or you thought you had, that turned out to be a fuck no? I was like, I know a while ago you had the one where the young lady wasn't a cuddler, but have you had any more recent, like one that was more recent?
Oh yeah. Okay. So it was a great first coffee date, and we were really sort of riffing along, and it was a lot of fun. And then she mentioned that the relationship styles. There's three relationship styles. I can't remember. One is anxious, one is avoidant, and then the other is like, right? And she identified
Yeah.
herself as avoidant. And I just went, well, that's the end of that. Okay. That was my inside voice. But no, I'm not a good match with somebody who is an avoidant, in a
Mhm.
relationship.
Yeah.
So, and that is on my compatibility code.
I think I'm on board with you. I've not heard of it called dating styles. Do you mean like is that similar to the attachment styles, or?
Attachment styles.
I was like, I'm learning
No, no,
something
no.
new right
You're
here.
you're right.
I've
You're
never
right.
heard about the dating styles.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they're attachment
I
styles.
didn't even realize I said dating styles.
Yeah.
No, I meant attachment styles.
Okay. But no, those are really big things. And this probably bites me in the butt. I'm too nice, or I'm too flexible sometimes, because I never really like to say never to things, because I can think of a handful of times where I was like, this will just never work on paper. Not my thing. Brussels sprouts, easiest example. I was like, on paper, it's not something Josh is into. What's one of my favorite things to eat now? Fucking Brussels sprout. So I was like, I can't say never. So I probably entertain a lot more than I should, because you never know.
Well, your compatibility code can change over time,
That's
right?
a good
It's
point. That's
not
a good point.
fixed.
Yeah.
It's not fixed. Mine changes every time I have a learning experience. What happened there, and does anything need to go on or be changed on my list?
No, I mean, that's good. And that's a big thing that I have to deal with a lot of times with my clients is, once again, not everything has to be forever, but that also means your perspective, how you operate. And the advice that we talk about is, yeah, when we first start, we're doing a lot of introspective work, but that doesn't mean you always have to work on your inside. Sometimes I was like, you've done enough work on yourself. We can't polish anything else right now,
Right.
because you haven't exercised that knowledge, or I was like, it's polished enough. We haven't dirtied it up. We haven't dinged it up. Sometimes we got to fix the outside, we got to get you out of sweatpants for every coffee date. Maybe try to invest in some slacks, or a
Yeah,
button
yeah.
down, those little different things. So it only makes sense that the prereqs that we look for when we get into a relationship changes as well, because what you looked for and expected at 20 is not what you're looking for or expecting now. In my 30s, in your 40s, these wherever you are in your dating journey, especially if you've already like done like the marriage kid, like you've done like your big tick marks, you're probably looking for something completely different than somebody who hasn't done those. So that probably discounts a lot of people from your compatibility code. Now, this is one more question I'll ask you, because I think it's just a fun one. And it's really just been like a brain scratch for me this season. We spend a lot of time saying that I just want to be happy, or like happiness means a lot. But we don't think about what happiness looks like, feels like, tastes like, smells like. So somebody asked me this the other, like a month ago, and I just get a chuckle out of it. Ian, if you had to describe happiness as a smell, what would it smell like? I know that is probably one of the most random questions you have ever heard, but
Yeah, I think it would just smell like a really beautiful, long cooked tomato sauce cooking on the stove and filling the whole house with the smell of, you know, cooked tomato sauce and the herbs inside it and the garlic and the olive oil and all of that. And it just feels like home.
are you Italian?
I My ex is Italian,
That'll,
and so I know how to make sugo.
I was like, that sounded like a bit of nostalgia. So I was like, I knew that either came
Yeah,
from
yeah,
your
yeah.
family or
She was a
reciprocal.
fantastic cook.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, I've always said that. I was like, Rachel Ray could get a ring any day, because I know I would be well fed. I love that, because I think the more I ask that question, the more people kind of have started giving me a similar answer, because happiness should feel nostalgic. It should take you back to a time when things felt simple, or you just weren't stressful.
Hmm.
And
Agreed.
I'm never stressed when I'm well fed. So a good red sauce usually precedes me being fed really well. I love this whole idea of the fuck yeah method, of before we do all this investing, to just stop and be like, hey, what are we really looking for? We don't just go to the grocery store and wander around. We usually have a list. We
Right.
try to stick to the things on the list so that we can make whatever we want for like the thing we're going to make for dinner. So I love the fact that you've created this method. Can't really wait to dig into it, to see how me and my friends, because there's about a 15-year gap between some of my friends that given the book to. I'm going to love to see how it kind of translates to our everyday reality. I know we only have 3 weeks left in 2025, but do you have anything you're excited for to wrap the year or to start 2026 with?
Well, the launch of the guide is new, so I'd love to get lots of testimonials. You know, I hope people buy it for Christmas for themselves or for others, and that I start hearing testimonials. I've got one on my landing page of somebody who is now living with her her F yeah guy. So so that would be my hope, is to hear that lots of people were made happy because they were able to follow a system that just made it easy for them to choose the right person and not choose the wrong person.
I say this: there's nothing more fulfilling than seeing your practices, your teachings help people live the life that they wanted to live. So, here's to everybody pausing this video, clicking on the link down below to order your copy or somebody else's copy of the Fuck Yeah Method. And here's to 2026 being just as exciting, successful, and maybe filled with a fuck yeah partner. Um,
Yeah,
your
exactly.
own.
Yeah, if you just go to Amazon and type in "fuck yeah method" or "f yeah method," you'll find it. And I'm waiting momentarily on approval of the audiobook. The audiobook will be available within a day or two. So
Amazing.
the Kindle version is there on Amazon, and then the audio version, excuse me, will be there on Audible soon.
Amazing. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging in here and making it through another episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. I can't wait to see all you amazing bachelors, bachelorettes, and partner people next week for another new episode. But until then, remember to say fuck yeah or fuck no to the stuff that serves you.
Exactly.
See you guys.